Dear students, welcome back to the session of the discussion of the Village Schoolmaster, a poem by an 18th century poet, Oliver Goldsmith. So in the previous class we have just read the poem and also had a look at new words in the glossary given. In today's session, let us discuss the lines of the poem one by one. So firstly, let us consider lines 1 to 4, which reads, "Beside yon straggling fence that skirts the way, with blossomed furze and profitably gay, there in his mansion, noisy mansion skilled to rule, the village master taught his little school." In first two lines, the poet talks about the location of the school. Probably it is dilapidated now, in the on the verge of falling down or decayed, abandoned. There is a fence along the path, road, and at the end of that fence there is this school, and along the side of that road there are beautiful flowers which are unnoticed by people. They are not praised for their beauty. So in this sense, beautiful flowers and the school both are ignored in the passage of time. They have been abandoned. There in his noisy mansion, remember here in line number 2, blossomed furze, flowers. And here noisy mansion in line number 3 refers to school. Schools are always full of noise and activity. And village master, what does he do? He is skilled, he is an expert to teach in the school. The teacher, who is an expert, teaches the students there in that school. So this is how the poet introduces the school, its condition, and the teacher, who is an expert to teach the students. Let's go on. Lines 5 to 8 read as follows. "A man severe he was." Remember, the poet is talking about, or the speaker in the poem is talking about the teacher now. "A man severe he was." Severe mean to say strict, and stern to view, very fearful to view. "I knew him well." Remember, there is a speaker in this poem who uses the pronoun I. "I knew him well" means to say he knew that teacher very well. Therefore, he is able to portray that teacher in this poem. Yes, the teacher was very strict and very hard to see. And the speaker says, "I knew him well," and every trant knew. Trant here, student. So as the speaker knew him, even all the students knew that teacher very well. "Well had the boarding tremblers learned to trace the day's disasters in his morning face." So even boarding tremblers, here it refers to students who were irregular. Even these irregular students knew the emotions expressed on the face of the teacher. They could better even understand the teacher's emotions, feelings. So they could read the disasters, something wrong is going to happen. If at all there was something going to happen that was bad, it could be visible on the face of the teacher, and the same would be understood by even irregular students. So this is how the teacher even was expressive. The teacher was strict and serious in looks, The teacher knew him well, and every students knew. Even the disobedient students would read his moods. Fine, let's go on. Lines 9 to 12. Full well they laughed with counterfeited glee. Students would laugh sometimes. How? The teacher is very serious and strict to look at. But remember, at the same time, the teacher had jokes as well. At all his jokes, for well they laughed with counterfeited glee. At all his jokes, for many a joke had he. The teacher also knew how to entertain students. He also knew how to discipline the students. He knew he was an expert to teach, and he knew how to teach the students. So as to break the boredom of teaching and to entertain students, he had many jokes. So whenever he cracked jokes, students would laugh at those jokes. Now, even if they didn't want to laugh, they had to laugh because the teacher was serious. They even feared what would happen, what would the teacher do to them if they did not laugh. Okay. Full well the busy whisper circling round conveyed the dismal tidings when he frowned. Even when the teacher was in some worry, students would come round. They would meet and talk about the things which bad that have happened to the teacher, and they would discuss all these things in a low voice. Now lines number 13 to 16. Yet he was kind. Now look at the many facets of the teacher. He was serious, he was strict, he had jokes, and he was kind. He knew how to behave in a given situation. Yet he was kind, or if severe in art, though he was very serious in looks, he was very kind man. The love he bore to learning was in fault. He had only one fault according to the speaker or the poet in this poem. His only fault was, ironically, it's an irony. Any teacher should have the quality or the habit or hobby to read. That's what makes a teacher updated and knowledgeable. But here the speaker says the only fault of that teacher was learning. Now there is some irony in it. The village all declared how much he knew. It was certain he could write and cipher too. Yes, he was no doubt a knowledgeable man, and the whole village, the village folk, they praised him to the sky for the knowledge he had, because he could read, write, and interpret. Yes, now line number 17 to 20. See, the poem continues on the note of the skills, other skills what the teacher had. Lands he could measure, terms and tides presage, and even the story ran that he could gauge. Gauge is to measure. Terms and tides here refer to weather conditions and festival times in a year. In arguing too, the person owned his skill. Yes, besides having all these skills, that is to measure, judge, predict, weather, and so on and so forth, this teacher also was a skilled person in arguments. But look, ironically and humorously, the poet or the speaker says the teacher continued to argue even when he was defeated or he had lost his argument. He could continue to argue. That was his uh, other side of his knowledge. Yes, at the same time, he would continue to argue even when he lost a point. That's how the teacher was sometimes humorous, funny, sometimes severe, serious, strict, and sometimes very kind, and sometimes very skilled, who would measure lands and read conditions and predict weather and mark festivals and so on. Now lines number 21 to 26. While words of learned length and thundering sound amazed the gazing rustics ranged around. Villagers, now by listening to his words, arguments, they would gather around him to listen to his knowledgeable words, his knowledge, and they were amazed. They wondered, oh, what a learned man he is. And still they gazed, and still the wonder grew. The people, the village folk, they continued to look up at him for his knowledge, and still every time they saw him, their wonder also grew. And they wondered that one small head could carry all he knew. They even wondered how a small head like he had. Of course, heads are not very huge and small in size. They may differ slightly in size. But these village folk, they wondered, like, this man's head, which is small, how can it carry such a huge knowledge? But past is all his fame. Such a famed teacher, once upon a time, who drew the respect of the villagers, amazement of them, their respect due to his many skills, is now a teacher of the past. The very spot, so that village probably, the very spot where many a time he triumphed is forgot. So in the village where he won over arguments, defeated other people in knowledge matters and so on, is now forgotten. Therefore it is now a deserted village. Deserted in the sense where people no more are living. So this is how the poem presents the typical schoolmaster of 18th century England. To recap our discussion, this session, the poem talks about a speaker's respect for the teacher. He also talks about the teacher's qualities and knowledge. The villagers wondered at his knowledge and skills, but such a famed teacher is no more. He is a teacher of the past. The poem also reflects the changes that have taken place in the rural place. Now, this is another insight into the poem, that village has been abandoned. People are living there no more. Therefore, it also suggests that the village was abandoned. People must have vacated that place. Alright, this is all about Oliver Goldsmith's poem, The Village Schoolmaster. With this, let us call it a day and meet in next session with another poem. Thank you.